Slave Rebellion Part 3. John Brown, an uprising in Harpers Ferry, Virginia, which is now part of West Virginia. In 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act had opened the newly found territories to slavery. The battle was on between the pro-slavery border ruffians and the anti-slavery group, the Harpers. They clashed over and over the extension of slavery into the newly territories of Kansas and Nebraska. For the next few years, it was clashes after clashes, one atrocity after the other. Kansas became known as Bleeding Kansas. In 1855, John Brown joined the fight for the free soil cause. Brown's sons were already part of the cause. Pro-slavery forces had moved in to a town of Lawrence. They had burned down parts of the town. John Brown and his group violently retaliated by killing 5 pro-slavery sympathizers. Back in Ohio, John Brown and now a small group of followers began to plot a plan on Harpers Ferry, then Virginia, now West Virginia. The plan was to capture the arsenal at Harpers Ferry, then retreat to the mountains and establish a maroon-like community for runaway slaves and use that as a stronghold. From this point, they would raid plantations after plantation and lead slaves to freedom, just as it was done in Jamaica. John Brown at first was not having very much luck recruiting people into his rebel army, but his closest advisors managed to recruit some men. Others would not join but were willing to give money to the cause. Word spread among abolitionists in the North that a planned attack on slavery was on. Unfortunately, Harriet Tubman declined to join due to health reasons, and Frederick Douglass also declined because he thought the plan would never work. Frederick Douglass tried to convince John Brown that the plan would never work. John Brown, rebel leader and radical abolitionist. Brown was born May 9, 1800. Ironically, this was the same year rebel leader Nat Turner was born. Both John's parents, Paul, Owen, and Ruth, were simple, hard-working people. They were vehemently opposed to slavery. John Brown studied ministry in New England, where abolitionism was the strongest in the nation. Brown's first wife, Deontay Lusk, birthed him 7 children, and she died in 1832. His second wife, Mary Ann Day, birthed John Brown 13 children. John Brown had a large family. He supported them by tanning, surveying, and farming. Brown laid out the plan in a secret meeting he had gathered in Canada. Among Brown's men were some of the most bitter anti-slavery haters. Others, mainly abolitionists, were ready to lend support but would not join the army. For about 1 year, Brown and his men mingled among the people of Harpers Ferry. They learned the layout of the land, the ins and outs of Harpers Ferry. Brown's men numbered at 21. 16 were white, 5 were black. All of them were under 21 years of age. On Sunday, October 16, 1859, John Brown moved into Harpers Ferry, they captured the arsenal and took several hostages, but John Brown was cornered by a quick, organized militia. His attempt at negotiation came from a point of weakness rather than from a point of strength. Brown and his men were trapped inside the building. 36 hours later, Colonel Robert E. Lee led a force of U.S. Marines. They charged up the arsenal and broke in. A shootout ensued. When it was all done, John Brown was captured along with 5 other survivors. Some had managed to escape, while others had been killed. In John Brown's words, "I wish to say furthermore that you had better, all the people of the South, prepare yourself for the settlement of that question that must come up. For the settlement sooner than you are prepared for it. The sooner you are prepared, the better. You may dispose of me very easily. I am nearly disposed of now. But this question is still to be settled. This Negro question, I mean. The end of that is not yet. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away with the blood. I had, as I am now, thinking vainly, flattered myself that without very much bloodshed it might be done." On October 27, 1859, John Brown and his men were taken to Jamestown, Virginia, which is now part of West Virginia. Brown's trial lasted 3 days and a half. Brown was found guilty and sentenced to be hanged on Friday, December the 2nd, 1859. On the day of Brown's execution, John Brown calmly went from jail onto the horse-drawn wagon onto the execution site. No civilians were allowed near the site. The fear lingered that abolitionists and others whom have tried to free John Brown from a death sentence and would mount a rescue attempt. Among the close-eyed witnesses were 1,500 militiamen, including General Stonewall Jackson and John Wilkes Booth, the man who would later assassinate President Abraham Lincoln. John Brown's last words were, "Be quick." Seconds later he was hanged. Seconds later he was dead. Brown's followers were later found guilty and hanged as well. Southern slaveholders made John Brown a lunatic. Abolitionists made John Brown a saint.